Welcome to the Haven Hubcast, a place to learn what business leaders, owners, and professionals are doing to navigate and grow in today's market. Hear from industry experts on everything from marketing, leadership, financing, and more. Brought to you by Haven, a co-working space where you can connect, create, and get stuff done.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Haven Hubcast. I am your host, Nancy Sheed, and I am very excited to be here with Suzy Bessett. Suzy, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Suzy is the founder and president of the Metabolic Connection, and we are going to learn a lot today about our own metabolic connections and all things in terms of health, well-being, wellness, and doing that through, as I'm learning from Suzy, through understanding our relationship with eating and our understanding of our own metabolic issues, challenges, or how we approach the world through our gut, so to speak. Suzy, you are a certified personal trainer. You are a certified eating psychology coach, and you are also an award-winning film producer and filmmaker. What a combo to sort of put you in this role of the job you're doing now. Can you tell us sort of how you got to be where you are and this becoming your kind of expertise?
I would love to. Thank you. So I put myself through college. I ended up thinking I was going to go be the next Barbara Walters or Oprah, but the universe had a very different plan for me. I put myself through college and ended up in the investment business. So I spent 10 years as a Wall Street girl, if you will, in the 90s and in a job that there were not a lot of women, which was an incredibly amazing experience. In 2000, my now ex-husband and I moved back to Connecticut and raised our kids. I have a 20-year-old son who's out at Boulder and a 17-year-old daughter who's a senior in high school here in Connecticut. So it's very exciting. And then about 10 or 11 years ago, I became a certified personal trainer. I had a very small business in my home. And while I was training my clients, I had every supplement company, shake company, diet company coming to me saying, we've got the next best thing. And it just never resonated with me. I've never really been a person that believes in diets per se. I think supplements are very important, but I think they can be definitely overused and overprescribed. And fast forward a couple of years in, I did a seminar with a local OBGYN about hormones. And there was a woman there who came up to me and said, I want to tell you about what I do. And I will tell you, initially, it sounded very hippie trippy to me, an eating psychology coach.
Right. We're like woo-woo, a little like out there. Right, I get it.
And this is coming from somebody that's practiced yoga for now 28 years. So I am pretty hippie trippy and not religious, but very spiritual. But anyway, I did a bunch of research. And to make a long story short, a week later, I was accepted into the program. And I have now for 7 years had a proven track record, successfully helped chronic dieters get off the roller coaster of dieting and a disordered relationship with food and get on with living. So that's been very exciting. Almost 3 years ago now, I formed the Metabolic Connection. And as you so beautifully said, we offer a complete and unique approach to disordered eating and metabolic issues. But what that really means is that I have believed for many years, even predating my time as a trainer, that what's going on internally in our hormones, which is the endocrine system, and what's going on with our relationship with food, I think they're inextricably linked. And I think that until we understand both parts of that, we're unlikely to have success in our health journey, whether it's going on a diet or trying a new supplement and so on. So that's kind of the basis of it. And there's a lot more to tell, but that's kind of the basis of it.
Well, very exciting. And I love that you are coming at this, from a different approach as opposed to just work out more or just do the right workouts, right? Like I know from various boot camps, even though they've been successful in maybe helping get in shape, I will never forget the statement that the personal trainer, she said, you can do this as well as you can. She's like, but it still depends on what's going into your body as to the impact it's going to have. And I thought, I just love that she's acknowledging, right, that no matter what we're doing on the outside, no matter what we're doing in terms of movement and all the other right things, that whatever it is that we're putting into our body and how we are thinking about things and processing things are as important. And I love that you're bringing that together.
Thank you. Thank you.
Tell me a little bit, Suzy, about like, when do people come to you, or at what point do they come to you? You know what I mean? Is it they've gotten a terrible diagnosis? You mentioned, chronic dieters, they've just had it, they've tried everything. Is it that they've been referred to you? Sort of, how does somebody identify when they need to be focusing on their own metabolic connection?
That's a great question. Twofold. One is, by the time somebody gets to us, me, and I'm actually building out a team, but I'll say me for right now, they have been on every diet and they're sick and tired of it. They're really tired of the eat this, not that mentality and the shame and guilt that the traditional diet companies end up putting on us, for lack of a better term. I do get referrals from orthopedic surgeons. I get referrals from OBGYN groups and the like. So there are definitely more medical people and certainly endocrinologists, there are definitely more medical people that are trying their very best, which is a whole nother episode, to not just say, go home and lose weight, because there's a diminishing return there. And we know that go home and lose weight is not working for most people. So it's pretty much when somebody ends up across from me, whether it's virtually or in person, they're worn out. And I've had everybody from, 22 to almost 80. The ones that are really fed up tend to be the ones that are, I'm 56, 40, 50, 60 years old, and they've been for 20, 30 years, they've been trying everything to get the weight off and or reframe their relationship with food. So that being said, it's not a quick fix. It is not a quick fix. And the problem is, not only has the diet industry sold us on that modality, if you will, the more time goes on, especially for our teenagers and young 20-year-olds, everything's immediate. Everything's in quick sound bites. And so people want that
quick fix.
They want that quick fix. And I am very blunt. There's not time, but I tell a story about a referral that I got from an endocrinologist, a friend of hers. I can just tell you quickly. And she called me and she literally just hung up the phone with her nutritionist dietitian, and she was in hysterics. Now, by the way, I want to say I have a nutritionist that works on my team, so I am not putting down nutritionists, okay? But this particular one, she got off the phone with, and she said, you need to start eating like 700 to 800 calories a day. So much to say about that. So we went on with our conversation, and when I gave her more information about the program and told her that the way that we kick off is a 2-month no diet, she paused. She kind of, when I say sobered up, she got her emotions together, if you will, and said, I'm going to see a guy that I went to high school with who I've liked since high school, and I need to lose 10 more pounds by a month from now. And so I can't do that. And I said, I completely understand. You know where I am. There's no way. Not only can I tell you, I cannot assure you that you're going to lose 10 pounds in a month. I can basically promise you that you're not going to lose 10 pounds in a month. So it's hard because I am not only a bleeding heart, but while music is my passion, this is my life's work. I want to help as many people as I possibly can, but I have to make sure that expectations are set properly, which is a big part of my initial work with people.
Well, and I also like to be reminded, as I have a splint on my arm right this minute, right? Like, it's a chronic thing. It didn't just happen overnight, right?
That's
there was a lot of stress that was going into this pain point that finally, I just love that, like, it took us a long time to get wherever we are in our head and our body and our eating and our whatever, that we then get used to, like, oh, but I can just snap my fingers and make it better.
That's right.
I think a boot camp isn't for 6 days, right? Like, most boot camps are for 6 weeks, right? To get you started, to get the habit in place. And there's I'm sure you've got the stats as well, right? Like, whether it's 30 days or 27 days, to make a habit and make change doesn't happen overnight. But it's wonderful that you're kind of defying the quick fix, scare people and promise the moon and over deliver, or promising and then under delivering and frustrating people. You mentioned, and we talked about this earlier, we've all, or most of us, familiar with the term eating disorders. You are very clear to talk about disordered eating. And I would love for you to talk a little bit more about that and those differences. for those who don't know, or just, again, I think for us to have a better vocabulary about how we talk about our approach to food.
Yes, thank you. And I think this is very important. So I'm just going to start with eating disorders. I do not work with people with eating disorders. This is a very broad spectrum comment about eating disorders, but when people think about it, it generally falls under the umbrella of anorexia and bulimia. It's my understanding from a psychologist that works specifically in that space that we are about nationwide. So when I talk about statistics, it's really here in America, but nationwide, about 5% of us fall under the eating disorder umbrella. And again, this is just my understanding. So if there are variations on that, I apologize. But I did understand also that during COVID, it went up to like 9 or 10%. So that's an eating disorder. The rest of it, the other 90, 95% are the people that I work with, if you will, is disordered eating. So two parts to this. What is disordered eating? Disordered eating is a relationship with food, that which impacts our health, our wellness, even our mental health and our well-being. So somebody with disordered eating can fall under the umbrella of an emotional eater, an eater when they're bored, an eater someone that uses food as a reward, which many of us grew up saying, oh, you did a great job. Let's go get an ice cream cone, which, listen, in and of itself, on occasion, that's not a bad thing. But then as we become older, we think, well, it's a reward. And then sometimes people even use food as a punishment, right? So there are many different ways. And sometimes people are a little bit of all of those.
That was going to be my question. Are we one or could we be several?
Well, we could be several. And it's my job to help hone in on, figure out all of those of what they are and hone in on one thing at a time. The other part that's important, though, is that just like I always say, we didn't pop out at birth prejudice, right? We also didn't pop out with a disordered relationship with food. Okay. So when I talk to people, I explain this is from your family of origin. This is a generational relationship. And again, the diet industry and social media and all these other, and food quality and food insecurity. And there's so many other parts of this, but for our conversation, and the way that I work, I really try to get my clients to go back. And the first question I ask them is, who are you as an eater? What is your relationship with food? But then after we do a whole bunch of intake and other information gathering, we then go back to the family of origin. And I say, tell me about your mom and dad. Tell me about what their relationship with food is. Let's talk about what their parents' relationship with food is. And so it kind of sets the stage very methodically. And it's fascinating, the things that pop up in people's heads, when they think about their mom, of course, doing their best, right? This is never,
right.
By the way, and I always say this to my clients, this is not to open up a can of worms and slam the parents or anything like that. It's an information gathering to go, oh, all right, well, that's interesting. This is the way food was handled when I was a teenager. So that's part one. And then the other, or two parts. And then the other part is control. And I always say that if you go back to the beginning, right, and we were all in caves, we had really two goals. It was procreating and finding food to eat, right? Hunting and gathering and making babies, right? So, I've written articles about the trajectory in my belief of how we got to where we are. But to me, the biggest thing, and the diet industry is always trying to force us in America to get control, take better control of your health, take better control of what you're eating, take better control of, your time spent getting to the gym and all of that, right? Which there's some truth to that. What I find problematic is when we are very, very young, we realize very early on that we have control over two things. I'm talking little. I'm talking like 2, 3, 4, let's just say 5 for an easy number. We learn we have control that what comes out of our mouth, what we say, which as a mother, I can say is always challenging, even with a teenager, and what we put in our mouth, what we eat. So we learn very, very early on, that the food thing, putting food in our mouth, is something that we have control over. So what I found, along with everything else I just said, the generational relationship, what our parents are doing, and a lot of it's great, right? But we realize that that's what we have control over. So then as we get older and life gets out of control, people tend to use two things for control: food and weighing themselves. And Both of those can be productive, but it's been my experience that the strict, tight control that we've all have stuck in our brain tends to be, just another piece of the puzzle that makes things very difficult for people.
Counterproductive, or not the right lens to view or to measure that which is success they are trying to achieve, it sounds like.
Yes.
I wanted so many juicy things, but in terms of, I think you've set the stage for where people are when they come to you. I think you've given us a great sense of sort of some of the questions you ask for. I know you reference working with other partners, and this is a, kind of physical, mental, spiritual kind of experience. So you do look at blood work, right? And then what does the plan look like with you? I mean, is somebody then, or everybody's customized? What does that experience look like? You mentioned something is 2 months, but what does a plan look like with you? Or I would also say, like, to somebody before they even come to you, what are the 3 things you wish they knew that would get them ready for success? And those might be 2 different things.
I will think through the second part. I'll go back to your first part of your question first. Great. So when I founded the Metabolic Connection, and it still is as far as the base of the program, is get blood work and then work with me on figuring out what your relationship with food is. And I can explain a little bit more about what I'm building out and why after. So the way my program works on my side is, and I used to not be, I'll just say this, I used to not be as strict about getting people to get their blood work before we started. It kind of was part of it. And I don't do that anymore for the reasons I just said, because sometimes halfway through, they're still saying, oh, I'll get it. And then I'm still trying to I'm throwing darts to the dartboard with a blindfold on, right?
Right.
But for my side of it, it is a 12-week program. So it's only 3 months, right? And I've had people that have gone longer. And frankly, that tends to be some of my older clients that have been at this for so long. We're still working through so many layers, but the gist of the program is it's 12 weeks. And the first 2 sessions, so every session's an hour, and the first session is 2 hours, so 2 sessions. And we do what I call is an intake, okay? And I have them sign off, by the way, an agreement, and they understand what the parameters are and fees and so on and so forth, and what I do and what I don't do. That's very, very important. So during the intake, it starts with, as I always say, the boring stuff, right? And I said, we're going to start with the boring stuff you've talked about a million times. Once we talk about this, you are literally not going to be talking to me about these items for at least 2 months. So I start, what do you weigh? What do you used to weigh? What do you want to weigh? Somebody says, oh, I'm 200 pounds now. I used to be 140. When was that? Well, I was in high school and I played sports, right? So we're framing like, where are you? What are all the variations? I go through who their doctors are, if they're seeing therapists. I get clearance if they ever need. I'm very, very careful about all of that. We talk about all of their health issues. Do they have diabetes? We go through what they like to do for movement, which is very important. And then once all of the kind of checklist items, that's just a few. Once we get through that, this is still the intake. We then start talking about family of origin. We start talking about, who are you as an eater? And we get some information. I get some information on that. And then I said, tell me about your parents. Tell me about growing up. What was your parents' relationship with food? I find it very interesting from one woman to another. It's always fascinating to hear my female clients talk about their moms and relationship with food, especially, again, I'm in my 50s. Back in the day, the conversation was different, for sure. So that's kind of where we begin. And 2 hours for both of us, my client and myself, goes by in a snap. At the end of that 2 hours, I then take a snapshot of everything we talked about. In every session, I send my client away with 3 things to do, right? And always the next session I'll tell you about in a minute of where I start with people. But I have them journal. And some people love it and some people don't. So some people will write pages and other people will just jot things down. And it's not the journaling of the old days. I'm not asking them to journal about what they're eating and what they're not eating. I'm asking them to journal about the things that we are working on for the week, which are really more thoughts around food and the whys around the food, not even about the food. One thing I'll say before I tell you what usually the first homework assignment is, it's fascinating. The people that have been on diets forever and have been to many nutritionists and dietitians will almost always start and then they keep adding in what they ate. And sometimes once I'm down the road for a bit with somebody, I'm like, so here's the deal. I don't really care what you're eating. Of course I do. And I always frame it with, of course I care what you're eating. But for right now, it's not about the food. There are no good or bad foods. There are bad portions and a bad relationship with food. But people always catch themselves still trying to prove to me that they're eating correctly. I'm air quoting right now, or terribly, like, acting like I'm, chopping my head off. And it's not about that to start. So, and then the last part is after we do the intake, I usually start with two parts, which is finding out who you are as an eater. And the way that we do that is I ask them to remove all distractions for every single meal. You would be shocked at how difficult this is for people. This is not a intelligence thing. It's not an anything thing. We as the collective, we have become so distracted with phones, computers, television, books, etc., that we tend to get on it every time we're eating, right? And when I explain to my clients, think about the popcorn theory when you go to a movie theater. We've all been there, right? We're with our friends, we're with our family, we get a bag of popcorn, we sit down, everybody's chatting, the previews come on, which seem to go on forever these days, but that's a whole other story. And then by the time the feature film comes on, we look down into our bag of popcorn and is it gone? I don't know, right? But we have no idea how that happened because we're chomping away, watching the previews, talking to our family or friends and so on. So I always use that as a kind of catch-all in our minds of how disordered eating can really change things. And science is finding it's not only changing how much we eat, but how we are metabolizing. If our body's in a stress state while we're eating, it's problematic. So that's the first part. And I could talk for hours about it, but I won't. The second part for the homework is to take all small plates and all small bowls. And it's the only thing I have my clients eat anything on. Again, I don't care what they're eating. Ultimately, I do. But for right now, the point is put all of your big plates up on a higher shelf, put all of your big, huge bowls up on a higher shelf. There's actually great tiny bowls on Amazon that I send links to people that are inexpensive and colorful and all that. Because we then, after continuous use, we learn to retrain our brain on what a proper portion is. So that's where we start, and then we go from there.
I love that. I love that. Okay, so I feel like this is the teaser for, and if you want to find out more, you should work with Suzy. I feel like we've covered where your experience and expertise as a personal trainer comes in, and obviously where that your eating psychology coach portion, influences your work. But we mentioned that you are an award-winning filmmaker and producer, and I just want to touch quickly on that. How does that fit into what you're doing with the Metabolic Connection?
I get goosies when this comes up. It is everything. Just quickly as background, it came out of nowhere, which in my opinion, the best things in life are organic, business, personal, and otherwise. And it started in a conversation with a friend talking about opening a Metabolic Connection clinic, and which is still something that is a future goal. And then I met with a friend of mine. She and her husband are filmmakers. And I told her some of my ideas, and she said, this needs to be a doc. So we interviewed many people over several days. And again, it is really going after and addressing the diet industry and what we believe their contribution to the obesity epidemic is. And we talked to some medical people, but to me, the best part are, the real people, if you will, that talk about their experiences with diets and endocrine issues and some solutions. Angelique Letizia, who is with Star Films and really crafted this film to be the story that it is, which has been amazing. And I think that while it's not even 10 minutes, it is really hitting home both domestically and internationally with a story and a conversation that is just not being talked about. And it's a door opener. I have literally a business plan for a huge docuseries, which if I can ever get in front of the Netflix and HBOs of the world, that is part of what I did in the film. But I also want to travel the country and talk to people about their relationship with food, because you cannot believe the things that I've heard both in client sessions and even just chit-chatting with people, on the street, if you will, about not about why they're heavy. My 94-year-old mom at the film release last summer said, do people really want to talk about why they're heavy? And I said, not really, but they love to talk about food. They love to talk about the relationship with food. They love to talk about why they love potato chips. They love to talk about why they love fill in the blank. So it's a very different route of having this conversation that is open and doesn't put shame and guilt on saying, like, why aren't you doing it right? Right. And the other part of all of this that I can't stress enough, and why I think this needs to be a much bigger conversation, is that our generational disordered relationship with food here in America does not discriminate. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on. Doesn't matter if you went to an Ivy League college or none at all. Doesn't matter the color of your skin or what kind of music you listen to or fill in the blank. This is an issue, especially after COVID, I will say, that does not discriminate. And I think we, the collective we, are missing the boat on having this conversation on a bigger scale, all the way to at our kitchen table with our own family and friends. I think it is a very, very important conversation, and not in a shameful way, but in a way of saying, like, this is important, right? And as far as the diet industry goes, my team and I had a big meeting between Christmas and New Year's, and we did a competitive edge study, I called it. I had a flip chart. I felt like back I was in my Wall Street days. And everybody picked 3 or 4 either diets or supplements. There was an app that I did, and we did a pros and cons. And for every one, there were many pros. So this is not that these diet companies or supplement companies or shake companies or apps don't have good tools in the toolbox in each one of them. But what I think is missing across the board in all of them to start, not integrated, because some are starting to integrate the conversation, but from the beginning, is to help source out how we got here and then bring in the tools in the toolbox. And that is another one of my hopes, is that these diet companies will come to the Metabolic Connection and say, how can we work together to make what we're doing better and help Americans that are struggling on so many levels with this epidemic?
Wow. Well, I'm inspired.
Thank you.
I feel like we're only just scratching the surface of this conversation, but thank you for your time and kind of cracking this dialogue open. Suzy, you and I are here together chatting because of Haven. Yes. Tell me a little bit, or tell the listeners a little bit about your Haven journey. How did it find you, or how did you find it?
It has been amazing. I found Haven through one of my best friends who had an office there. I had just sold my house, and I did one of the COVID sales, and I was living actually in a hotel with my kids for 2.5 months while my apartment building was finished. And so I was a social member, as I still am. And we had have a wellness group that has been amazing. I took a break last year. I had a whole bunch of health problems. Won't bore you with it, but I am back, and it is just an amazing shared workspace. It's predominantly women, right? I mean, there are some guys that work there, but
women-centric, we like to say.
Thank you. That is the term I was looking for. I appreciate it. And it's not just good energy. It is a term I probably use too much, but I'm going to use it again. And I said it in a meeting yesterday. That was a Wall Street term we used to use: a rising tide raises all ships. And I really, really, really believe that whatever line of work that we're in, especially in the work that I'm in, there are more than enough people to go around. This is not a competition for people. There are so many people that need help in our space and in many others. And Haven and Felicia, who, as you know, started the business right before COVID, right? And through her efforts and the incredible team that she has just, it's better than ever. So I'm very, very grateful to be on board with Haven and all of the programs, whether you're a social member or rent an office daily at Haven. It's a wonderful place. And centrally located in Darien, Connecticut. So it's easy to get to.
Yeah, exactly. Where the Haven magic begins and kind of goes to places like Haven Hubcast and beyond that. So, Suzy, thank you so much for your time. I say to listeners, seek out Suzy to learn more about the Metabolic Connection. Where is the best place to do that, Suzy?
Well, thank you. Thank you for all of this. So at the Metabolic Connection on Instagram and Facebook. LinkedIn is Suzy Bessett, which is SUZYBESSETT. And then my website is themetabolicconnection.com. And there is a link on my website, Contact Us, that you can fill in and send me questions. And I will just say, I get a lot of questions about fees and so on. I try to talk to people one-on-one because I want to make sure that I help as many people as possible. So when there's a need, I try to figure that out with people. If I just threw the fees up on my website, it's more than just that. So I really try to do a 5-10 minute quick consult to explain how the program works and answer questions. And then, of course, go over how the fees work. So
totally understand. It needs to be a good fit for everybody. And on that note, Suzy, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in to another episode of the Haven Hubcast.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Haven Hubcast, a place to learn what business leaders and owners are doing to navigate and grow in today's market. Please leave a review on Apple Podcasts and subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Haven is a co-working space and virtual community located in the heart of Fairfield County, Connecticut. Haven is a hub for business owners and professionals to connect, create, and get stuff done. Find out more about the Haven community online at haven.com. That's HAYVN.com. Haven Hubcast is produced by Sound Advice Strategies.